Now anywhere else in the world, this might look like a cold, brisk, horrible day to be outside doing some fly casting, but not here. Not in Duluth, Minnesota. 26 degrees in December is very warm because come end of December, January, February, March, we're looking around 0, okay? So 26, it's nice, it's warm, let's do some fly casting. So I got a viewer question from a guy named Sven. He said, when I'm casting a pike fly on my 9-weight with a pike fly line, that's probably important, my cast is very smooth. When I want to cast a Clouser, however, on an intermediate sink tip, my fly's bouncing and I have difficulty controlling it. Do you have any advice? Leader, type of cast, what kind of distance can I expect with a Clouser? So today's video is all about how to cast heavy flies. Now, I'm going to try to recreate that, right? We have, this is a 10-weight, this is the Chippewa River Custom Rod, one-piece Predator stick, one of the greatest rods ever. We're going to get a big pike fly, we're going to dunk it in a bowl of water, because I don't want to hear crap about your fly's not wet situation. We're going to do it by the books, and we're going to bomb it out, show you a standard cast, nice and smooth. Then, I have in my pocket 2 samples here that I want to talk about when we get to the Clouser situation. The first is a Clouser with no material on it. It's just a hook and lead eyes. I'm going worst case Ontario here, folks. The second is a synthetic Clouser, and I want to talk about a Mark Sedotti principle known as weight balancing flies, and also reference Captain Ian Devlin, who loves to tie Clousers with synthetics, and I'll get into that. So let's bomb a cast. This is a beast fly, 6-aught TP610 on there. And we're just going to get that thing in a bowl of water. My fly line, this is, so something Sven mentioned, he's using a pike fly line to cast his pike flies. Typically, most of the industry's pike fly lines are some sort of streamer-specific fly line. It's a weight-forward line with a short belly, usually around 30, 35 feet. And for whatever reason, the industry has kind of set itself on pike fly lines should be spay tapers or heavy rear belly or triangle taper fly lines. I wouldn't do that necessarily. I prefer like a shooting head, but whatever. We're going to see how a triangle taper, this happens to be the Rio Elite Predator. It's not designed to cast in 26 degrees, but we're going to make it work. So keep that in mind as far as gear. We're using a weight forward fly line. It has a short belly section, 30, 35 feet. I think this is 35. It is a triangle taper, heavy rear belly, and it gets thinner and thinner, lighter and lighter towards the fly. What makes it streamer specific is the fact that the belly is short. A lot of times all-purpose lines are going to be 40, 45 feet, or like long carry lines, like delicate presentation dry flies might even be like 50-foot bellies, but the bellies get longer as they become more general purpose or more specific towards dry fly nymph. When they're super, super short, being aggressive, loading close, usually they'll be classified as being heavier than your standard fly line. They're not actually heavier, they're just heavier because they're condensed, but the overall head weights are the same. I'll get into that in a different video. But the other thing that makes it streamer specific is a short front taper, usually like 6 feet, which would be considered very aggressive for the industry standard, which is more like 9 or 12. So 9 is kind of your all-purpose, 12 is very delicate, 6, very short front taper that dumps energy into the fly. Going into the leader real quick, my leader is about 3.5 feet. Because this is a 10-weight, I have to have a fat butt section, so this transfers energy. So this is a 30-pound butt section going into a 20-pound class tippet. I don't fish clear water. I don't really care about tippet size. I fish big flies fast. I don't see tippet to be a problem. You could obviously drop that down to 16 or 12, whatever you have to do, but keep it short so the energy dumps into the fly. When we get into casting wind resistant and heavy flies, a short leader build is very important because the goal is to keep the system as tight as possible without any slack. So short leaders. I don't want to get my fingers wet or else they're going to get cold, but I need that fly soaking. This line pile is going to suck. And I'm probably going to snag that fly up on a tree, but whatever. So I got my fly line to my backing. I don't know if I'll cast it that far, but I'm going to re-strip it all. Make some nice cold coils in the snow. This is ridiculous. Yeah, that line's got a little bit of memory in our 26-degree air temps here. Come on. All right, fly soaking wet. Everyone agree? Nice and smooth. Well, we got to hang up on the execution there. Little coil in our cold weather, which is to be expected. I'm going to stretch it out a little, see if that helps us here. Let's see how frozen you are. Let's get you wet again. Soak it up. All right, let's see if we get a little better. So that's a beast fly. That's a full fly line. My fly is pulled tight more or less, but it's hanging in a tree branch. We'll see how snagged up that is. But let's put a Clouser on and show you what happens when you go from something that's nearly weight balanced, a little bit on the wind resistant side, to something that is all mass, no air drag. Now let's see what happens if you take that same setup and you put a fly that has no wind resistance. So I'm putting on a hook with large lead eyes. They weigh about 1 gram. So this is quite a bit of weight. Quite a bit of weight with no air resistance. How are you supposed to cast this? We'll get into it, Sven. Let's do this. You guys want me to stick this in the bucket of water? Now, when a fly has more weight than it has air resistance, once it starts going, it doesn't want to stop. Now, if your timing is too soon, you're going to lose disconnect on that fly, and then you're going to preload and overload the rod tip. You'll throw a really, really bad tailing loop, and it'll be really bad on your wrist. If you wait too long, you get equally in trouble, because what happens is as that line and leader and everything straightens out, that fly is now going to tug on the system. It's going to pre-flex that rod tip, and then it's going to basically react to that. The fly rod is going to recoil a little bit, and you'll get this shock, bounce, and slack. And you cannot cast a weighted fly with slack. It's garbage. So what we're going to do here, we have a very short leader. We have a very short belly section on this fly line, 30-35 feet. What you're going to do to perform this cast is called a constant tension cast. When I'm casting my normal flies that are weight balanced, that are big, that work with this system, my cast start and stop and start and stop, right? There's abrupt stops to transfer all the energy, form a nice tight loop, carry everything till it goes, because the fly isn't outpacing my line and yanking on it. When you have this weighted system, if I stop that, you're going to get whoosh, dink, whoosh, stink. You're going to get these horrible jerky movements because that fly is reefing on that thing. So when you come back, you're going to go low, outside, to the top, forward. Low, outside, to the top, forward. That rod is almost never going to stop moving because you're never going to relieve the tension on the tip. You have to keep the whole thing in tension, which means everything has to be short. You can't necessarily aerialize a 40-foot, 45-foot long belly and a 9-foot leader. Good luck, right? But 30 feet with a 3-foot leader, 3.5, now you're talking. So you need a short belly fly line. You need a short leader system, and you're going to keep it all taut. And you should be able to cast a Clouser minnow, a full fly line, no problem, assuming that you can carry that weight forward head. The end of my head is right here, so I'm going to try to carry that. There's the fence again. I might have to cast this. No, I'm going to make it work. I don't care about that fence. We'll just switch angles a little. There she goes. She's gone. It's a little sloppy. I have to be really careful. I'll try it one more time, but she's gone into the woods. Hopefully she doesn't snag up on a tree. So there's the fence that keeps giving me problems. There's the tree line where I just snagged up. Let's try this one more time here, and then we'll put on our Synthetic Clouser. Don't get in the way, bowl. All right, there's my fly line. We have our constant tension. There's my head. I hit the fence, but it's still shut anyway. I hit the fence, but it didn't matter. So you should be able to cast a Clouser, a full fly line, but you have to be able to carry the whole system. So you got to keep the system short. Make sure you're always in contact with that cast. It's kind of a low, outside, up, top, and over, but it should be like drawing a circle instead of stop, stop, stop. It's the circle. Whew. Think smooth. Think about connecting the entire system for the entire cast. Now what happens instead of changing your casting style to overcome a heavy fly? What if you just add air resistance? Woo, now we're thinking. So instead of tying a Clouser in the traditional sense with bucktail, which basically has come here, wind resistant system, what happens if we increase the air resistance of the system to better balance the weight? Now this is something I learned from Captain Ian Devlin. This is how he ties his Clousers, mitigating that shock from the weight by covering them and tying them out of synthetics. So now we're getting into something called weight balance. So the problem with a weighted fly is once it gets going, it doesn't want to stop. The problem with an air resistant fly is that they don't want to go. So what if you combine the two? What if you weighted something relative to how much air resistance it has? Then in theory, it would fly perfectly, or it would fly with the fly line. It would not drag on the system or over accelerate past the system, causing severe shock. So when you take a pattern tied out of, say, water absorbing naturals or low wind resistant naturals like bucktail, but you tie it with a synthetic body, you can see when this gets wet, it doesn't collapse. And you can see this has a lot more density as far as fibers, and those densities are curly, they're wavy, but there's a lot of surface area and friction on this, like 10 times more than if this was tied out of bucktail. Significantly more. So we got our synthetic Clouser, which should be nearly weight balanced. It's soaking in our bucket of water here. Let's give her a cast. And so now instead of doing constant tension, I'm able to cast normally, besides my very cold, grumpy fly line. It was nearly a fly line cast anyway. But by increasing the wind resistance of the pattern, we balanced it so that it doesn't over accelerate past the fly line. It now flies with the fly line. And instead of having to change my casting stroke, which in this case, I had a fence to deal with, which kept getting in the way. A shoreline, you have trees, you have other structure, maybe there's a hill behind you, so you can't go low and up to the top, or your fly line, everything drags. Maybe you have to go up and over. Maybe you're on the beach, you're in the surf. Sometimes that constant tension cast is not gonna be beneficial to where you're fishing. You won't always be able to do that. Like if you're on a boat in the middle of a lake, that's great. But if you're not, good luck. What are you gonna do? How are you gonna solve that problem? Especially if it's like super windy. Being able to weight balance your fly, change the material set to increase the wind resistance so that you can then cast it normally in an efficient manner with tight loops that are cutting through the wind. Bada bing, bada boom, you're good to go. So that's how you cast heavy flies. That's also how you can weight balance heavy flies to make it work for you. So thanks for watching, guys. Hope that helps you out in your fishing. Yeah, and I'll see you in the next time. Probably not casting in my backyard in the winter with all this snow. It's kind of silly, but I'm glad we did it once. See you in the next one. Get off that tree. Get off that tree. Oh, looks like we got, oh, it came off. This is so ridiculous. Get in there. Soaking wet. I don't need the constant tension cast. Oh, isn't that nice? I really wish I didn't have cold, coily fly line stuck in the snow. Let's try it again. Like, what idiot's casting flies with hooks in his backyard? This idiot, that's who. Well, not perfect, but good enough. I don't know.